everybody, and welcome to ToRAISE Questions, the Doula podcast. Hi, Thérèse.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone.
Thérèse is Thérèse Hakoun. She's executive director of To Labor, which is a doula training and certifying organization. It stands for the Organization of Labor Assistance
for Birth Options and Resources.
That is what To Labor stands for, if you never knew.
Yeah, and that's who we really are.
So it's a birth doula training and certification organization. And this is our podcast. And we talk about doula stuff and birth stuff. And so we're going to start off with our tip.
Yes.
We have kind of a mishmash episode today.
And your tip, Sarah?
So yeah, the tip is what to bring to a postpartum visit.
Yeah,
we talked about this a little bit in the episode about postpartum visits, but I buy mother's milk tea.
That's good.
And bring...
Is that from Traditional Medicinals?
Yeah, that's the brand. And I bring just like 2 packets of tea to a postpartum visit. And then I usually like to bring a gift.
Mm-hmm. Such as, what might your gift be?
So I bring a board book. I get a board book and I write in Sharpie in the front cover, "To the baby, love your doula, Sarah." And then when my second baby was born, I got some gifts from my doula and midwife that were incredibly meaningful to me. And I started doing it thinking, when the baby's 2 years old and they're reading the book together at bedtime, they can remember the birth and hopefully have a...
That's nice.
So that's what I do. I have also heard people do meals. I don't do that.
Mm-hmm. But that's an idea.
It's an idea.
I mean, bring a meal or... Mm-hmm.
Bring a meal. Bring a picture frame.
Mm-hmm.
Bring... some people knit hats. I have done that before.
I used to make everybody I made blankets, kind of like a patchwork quilt kind of thing for the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I would often bring a food tray, like of nuts and things that they could snack on, that they could keep by their bed more than a meal, because often they were getting meals from other people, but I knew she needed to eat during the day. So it might have like clementine oranges and things that could sit out.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So hook us up on Facebook if you let us know what you bring for your postpartum visit. Yeah. If anything, if you bring a gift, what do you bring? We would love to know.
Yes.
So you have an update for us. Our episode number 32.
And we had a conversation with Terry.
Right.
Yeah, and it was about the breech and the bicornate uterus, and she wanted to we asked her to update us if she could about how that all turned out, and so I just wanted to share what she shared with us. The first good news was that the baby did rotate into head down.
That's awesome.
It was wonderful. And I think the baby did, maybe always planned to, but it said what she wrote to us. I'm just actually, Sarah, going to read to all of you what she said.
Yeah.
So, hello. I wanted to fill you in on my first client, as promised, who was a VBAC with the bicornate uterus. A complete success in every way. Baby turned at week 33 and remained in perfect position. Her due date was January 9th. Her doc wanted a C-section scheduled on the 12th. A very anxious mama who experienced prodromal for nearly 12 days and wanted this one to come out on her own so badly. 12 days with her first baby. I encouraged rest, walking, birth ball, and throw in some raspberry tea and lots of love and touch. Great doula, Terry.
Yeah.
At 4 a.m. on the 7th of January, which was, 2 days before her due date, her water broke. She was not experiencing contractions until after her water broke. We met at the hospital at 5:45 a.m. and she was 4 centimeters and progressing well. She was an awesome mama who did all that I asked for her, breathing to movement. She did it all, and baby was born vaginally and unmedicated in the most lovely way. The nurse that was by our side was so good, and the doc just left us alone, said we were doing great, and he would see us when we needed him, which was about 5 minutes before the baby was born. This is the note she posted in the community Facebook page we are both members of. It is very sweet, without question. I'm hooked. This is because this was Terry's first birth, and she said, So this is from the mama herself. So much for needing to worry about her not coming in time. Meet the new addition to the neighborhood. This is Faith Lily. Thank you, ladies, for all your advice. We kept up our walking, and after a 2-mile walk, my water broke the following morning at 4 a.m. At 10:46 a.m. that same morning, we got to meet our beautiful daughter face to face. Thanks to Jesus, my wonderful husband, and our amazing doula, Terry, I'm going to leave her name out, we were able to have a successful non-medicated VBAC. I cannot say how grateful we were to have Terry there, encouraging me and showing me all sorts of ways to relax and go through as little pain as possible. Not to mention she was a lifesaver in helping me with my breathing. In the end, it only took 19 minutes to push her out again. Thank you, Jesus, and thank you, Terry, and thank you for being my pillar, Andrew.
Wow, that's so sweet.
And she goes on though.
Jesus, doula, and partner.
Yes, but here's what she really ends with: thank you, Terry, and thank you for being my. And Terry, we love you so much. Thank you for being such a blessing to our family. If anyone is thinking about hiring a doula, you have to meet Terry. And so what she got out of this was this incredibly successful birth experience, which must have been very healing after having had the cesarean and being in a situation with the bicornate uterus and the breech.
The odds were stacked against her.
She chose a doula, and that was a really, really smart move on her part. Not that she couldn't do this without that doula, but obviously she's giving so much credit to what Terry did for her to keep her going. And that's the importance of the role that you who are all listening have to remember. This could have still turned out not the way the mama had hoped. And I'm sure she still would have given that kind of praise to Terry for the support that she gave her, because she walked her through the pregnancy, let alone the actual labor. So I like it because of the power it shows.
I can hear the New Jersey in your voice when you say Terry.
Terry. You sound like one of my kids right now. Reminding me I'm from New Jersey.
Awesome job, Terry.
Yeah,
I'm really
thanks.
glad that your first birth was so empowering for you, and I get why you're hooked. These are the kind of births that fill us to the brim and make us think we have the luckiest jobs on earth. And if you ever have a birth that is not like that, give us a call, because they're not all like that.
And that's it. We all know, but it's
but these are the ones that fill you up for the ones that
can take you down.
I think about those of you with little kids, you probably know the filling your bucket. Have you heard this? It's like, have you filled a bucket today? And the idea is that when you do nice things, you fill somebody's bucket. And when someone's being mean, they take your bucket away. And that's, I think, like those good births fill your bucket. And then the births that are challenging, or where you're working with a difficult provider, or where your client blames you for something that went wrong or whatever, those take away. And as long as you have a good balance of
buckets,
filling your bucket and taking away, then you can be a doula forever.
Yeah. So,
great job.
Yeah, really good.
And thanks for the update.
Yeah. Thanks, Terry.
So we got a question about from Sarah in Oklahoma. Is that right?
Tulsa.
And I think that, we need to talk about loss in these podcasts.
Yes.
And we keep saying we need to talk about loss, and we keep saying we will, and then we don't, because it feels huge and we want to get experts and this and that. And I still want to do that, but I don't want to keep putting it off because we feel like it's a big topic. And we don't want, I feel like if we're saying we're not going to do it until we can do it all, we'll never do it. So let's just do a little piece of it today. Let's talk about loss.
Right.
Do you want to read Sarah's question?
Well, go ahead. Why don't you? Oh, you don't have it in front of you.
I don't have it
I have it in front of me. Never mind. So I'm a certified birth and bereavement doula. And I was wondering what your thoughts and suggestions are for doulas working with miscarriage, stillbirth, and neonatal death situations. And she goes on, and so I want to include a bit of what she said as well as her thoughts. Perhaps because I work with a lot of bereaved moms and partners due to my training, I don't have a clear view on why you wouldn't be prepared to deal with loss any doula. But I hear so many doulas say, oh, I couldn't do bereavement. You're so brave. 1 in 4 women experience a loss, so I don't think it is brave. I think it's a must, or at least a must to have some knowledge on bereavement care, even if you don't offer the service. It still can come up. But many doulas seem to think it's optional, so I guess I would like to hear your opinion on that as well. And she'd also like a whole podcast, which
I think we should do.
Yeah, we will do. So I think this is a good jumping off point to discuss. I think your question, Sarah, is excellent. I think it's awesome. I think that it's important. I think that taking this bereavement doula training is another good continuing education part of doing doula work. And I don't think you have to take a workshop to do it. But if you want and one's available and you have the means to, you could take it, even if you're not going to be a bereavement doula, for exactly the reason that Sarah is bringing up, that loss is part of this job. And one of the things we talk about in the workshop, and it's always that moment, and it's on Friday, usually around Friday evening when we get to it, we bring up the fact that when you take on this work, what you need to understand, and when it's me teaching, I'm really trying to express that this is really important, that you have to look at that. Yes, you are preparing to go to a birth, but that you also have to know that you could possibly not be going to a birth, that it could be a death, or that death could have occurred anywhere along this pregnancy that you're working with your client. And that you have to look at that, because this is life and death. I mean, there are no guarantees. And sometimes there are warning signs, and we know that this is maybe happening. And sometimes things happen totally unexpected. And you have to have an awareness. And as I express is during it, I can't really prepare you for that moment. I can't say, well, here's how you'll feel, and here is the X, Y, and Z, the book to help you negotiate that, because we're all individuals, and how you will react to this is dependent on you as an individual. But what the beginning of preparation is the awareness and not backing away from it. I remember in one workshop, immediately a woman said, this makes me really uncomfortable. I mean, she just kind of blurted it out.
Do you know if she had experienced a loss?
No, she hadn't.
Okay, because I know sometimes that's the issue.
Right. No, and what she said at the end of it, because she kind of was embarrassed at that moment, but I thought it was wonderful that she said it, and my response was, I know this is uncomfortable, and it's not to make anybody uncomfortable. It's to make us aware of the reality of this, and also to expose the discomfort and so we can become more comfortable with this topic, because it is, we face very few things in our lives that we will all share. And one is we are born, and one is we die. Those are the common bonds that we have with each other, for sure. So it is a topic that we need to discuss, and even when it comes to pregnancy and birth.
Well, and I think Sarah's point, which I totally understand, is that I think you do hear in the birth community, like, I could never do that. Mm-hmm. And I think Sarah's point is, you don't have the luxury, if you're a doula, exactly. You don't have the luxury of saying, I could never do that, because
you may have to.
You may have to do that. And the difference, I think, what Sarah's talking about is being a bereavement doula, which is where you are seeking out and you have your name on a list for people who know they're going to need a bereavement doula.
Right.
And that is not for everyone. Right. And that has to be something that you're called to, either because it's, I know one bereavement doula who had a loss of her own. She had a stillbirth, and it took her a long time I would say you never get over that. Mm-hmm. But it took her a long time to deal with it enough that she felt like she could support other people. Right. And now she does, and she feels called to that work. and just because you are prepared to deal with it if it happens doesn't mean you have to go out there and be a bereavement doula. And that's, to Sarah, that's what I would say, is that I think you can say you're so brave to be a bereavement doula and be impressed by someone who seeks out those situations. My mom's a hospice nurse, and people say that to her all the time. How I could never do that. I could never do that. And she says that she's like, people in your life are going to die.
Exactly.
You know?
And so I think you're doing an excellent job, Sarah, of sorting out the difference of what we're trying to discuss here for the moment, which is what we don't, to use your words, you don't have the luxury of not facing this. You may never have the experience. There are people who have worked in birth for years and years and years, forever, and never actually been present when a baby has died. That's me. I mean, you think of getting close to 1,000 births, and I haven't been present when the baby has actually died. I have been there, though, at moments when babies have not been okay.
Yeah.
I have been with people during their pregnancies when they have had a loss in the pregnancy.
Right.
So I have experienced death, and I've experienced death of babies after they were born as well. It is something that...
So you've experienced loss. It's just you haven't experienced stillbirth, unexpected stillbirth.
Right, at that moment.
And when I talk about... And I think one thing I need to clarify, Sarah said in her email, 1 in 4 women experiences a loss, and so you have to be prepared to deal with it. That statistic includes all of pregnancy, including 4 weeks and 1 day.
Right.
And the vast majority of losses occur in the first trimester, and the vast, vast majority of those losses occur before there's a heartbeat. And so, 50 years ago, people didn't even, their period would be 3 days late, and they didn't even know they had a miscarriage. They would have a slightly heavier period, and that was it. And their period was just late. Now we know because we can test. And, there are women on message boards there are probably women listening who know they have had many miscarriages. As a doula, you are probably not going to be as involved in those early, because most people don't engage a doula when they're 5 weeks pregnant.
Right.
The statistics, I don't know off the top of my head, the statistics for loss after 20 weeks, which is when is not 1 in 4. So it is not as common, I think, as that. But as you say, I have never, so I'm trying to think, I was going to ask you about your personal experience. So you've had newborn death with a client. You've had pregnancy loss with a client.
I've had the other death that I bring up in workshops is the loss of the quote unquote healthy, normal baby,
a Down syndrome baby, or
cerebral palsy and severe damage done to the brain due to unknown reasons or just asphyxia at some time.
Which I feel like is the way that, just to make clear what you're saying, is there people listening who have experienced that, and it's just sort of, it's the loss of what you expected. Those people go through a grieving process that they love that baby, irregardless of how that baby came into or how the baby came onto this earth. But it's not, now they're facing a challenge they weren't anticipating over and above the normal challenge of being a parent. And that's a really hard thing to negotiate as well as a parent in the grieving process. And people, I think, on the outside sometimes do not appreciate the grief that goes with that loss, because there is a child, right?
And they think, well, you have this child, and yes, it is different than you will never hold this child, but it's nonetheless a grieving process that you as a doula should be aware of, to be present for if you're called upon. I think that
so I think that's probably a whole podcast.
It
is babies born alive, but there are health issues or concerns that you weren't expecting.
Yeah. So going back to death, I just want to go on what you're saying about the statistic, where this 1 in 4 may fit in, but I think you're good in clarifying that, because I think it's important also that we not scare anyone by a number that sounds so large,
Right.
Whether it be a mother herself or a doula. But I have had this experience, and others who have worked in this field have had this experience. You will be working with a woman who has had one or more previous miscarriages, and they are carrying that worry, that fear, in that loss into their life, because to them, they were planning, even if it was early in the pregnancy, they were planning to have a baby, and now they are pregnant again, and will this happen? And some of those people will actually hire a doula early in their pregnancy because it's one more insurance that they are carrying with them, that they're trying to do everything the right way.
The opposite can also happen, where they don't want to treat it like it's real until the very end. I mean, everybody's so different.
I know.
I had one woman call me at 38 weeks and say, she had experienced a second trimester loss. She had my understanding of the terminology is that if it's before 20 weeks, it's a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. If it's after 20 weeks, it's a stillbirth. This was like at 18 weeks, to her, this felt very real. Mm-hmm. It was a baby. It was recognizable, Anyway, they knew the gender. She said, I have just been pretending like this wasn't happening because I didn't want to get attached. And now I'm 38 weeks pregnant and everything's going fine. And, so yeah,
I had somebody exactly like that, Sarah.
I think it's very common.
Yeah, very. And it really, even through the whole rest of, until she gave birth and held that baby, because it was her first pregnancy that she lost at 22 weeks, I think it was, lost her daughter, until that second child was born. And she saw that he was alive. I don't think she could emotionally attach, because she was so worried of that pain again. Dealing with, the loss, I wasn't part of the first experience, but I felt a part of it because of the second experience.
It reminds me of the episode we did on sexual abuse and the way that you bring that into birth. I think when you've had a previous loss, depending on what it is, some women, I've worked with lots of women that had early miscarriages that I felt like it didn't have a huge impact on their birth, honestly. They had, I had a miscarriage, my first, and I mean, I just felt like it was horrible and it affected me and I was really sad. But by the time I was in labor, I don't know, it didn't affect me. So I think that's possible. But I've also worked with women who had early miscarriages that it did, and they bring it to birth with them, and they have this conception of their body as broken or something. So I think, go ahead.
Well, I want to go back also to preparation, or doulas being aware of loss, being part of this work that we do, not as something we need to focus in on, but something that absolutely you need to be aware of. And so the preparation, as I said, is first that awareness. You really got to look at it, because what I will share is that the woman at the end of our discussion in the workshop, the one who had blurted out, "Oh, this makes me uncomfortable," what she said at the very end was, and this was honest from her, not prompted by me or anyone else. She said, "I'm so glad we talked about this, because I would have ignored it. And if a woman had said to me, one of my future clients had said to me, 'Well, I'm a little worried about the baby, like what if the baby dies?' My reaction would have been, 'Oh, you don't have to worry about that,' or don't think about that." She said, "Because I realized in our discussion tonight, I didn't want to think about it. I realize now I need to look at this." So
what should your reaction be if someone says that to you? It's very common.
I think that if somebody because I talk about this a lot, I think there is probably not a person who's pregnant who isn't worried about the health and well-being of their baby, even those that you think are doing dangerous things that are possibly endangering their child. They still know that there's this life growing that they could be hurting, or this baby could be in danger in some way. Most women don't ever want to talk about it. They don't say it out loud because it's that superstition around it that if I say it, maybe it'll make it happen, it'll make it real. So if you have a client who says, I've just been worried, I just worry, like, what if something happens to this baby? I think, wow, isn't that awesome that she feels comfortable enough to say that out loud to you, because she may not be comfortable to say that to other people. I think a good response to that would be, well, tell me what you're thinking. Why are you feeling that? Is it anything specific? And just let her do the talking, because a lot of times it is related to something that she has a real legitimate fear about, like she had been exposed to some kind of chemicals, or she had early been, I think we talked about this in another podcast, early in her pregnancy, she had done things.
Yeah, that's the one I always hear. Yeah. I didn't know I was pregnant and I was drinking.
Or using some form of medication, or legal or illegal, to and there's concern around that, or there's a genetic family disposition towards it, something. Those are questions like some things she could actually, be discussing with her care provider to see if there's some way of knowing, is there testing that can be done to ensure more, or not ensure, but give more answers to that. This is where some people will have an ultrasound done that they perhaps weren't thinking they needed, just to get a better picture of the baby and the health and well-being of the baby. They may be more hypervigilant to that kind of testing. But then there are the other women who are saying it just because it can be an innate reaction to being pregnant.
I feel like most people, all of a sudden you have something that really matters.
Yeah.
How can you not
be concerned?
Yeah. I don't think everybody gets really anxious, but I think everybody sort of has that thought.
That's what I mean. I think that there's hardly a person out there that doesn't have that worry. And for some, they just need to say it out loud. And that's all they needed to say, and have somebody hold it for them. And for others, though, it does cause a lot of anxiety. Like, they cannot relax and then they start questioning, is my intuition giving me signs?
I was going to say, I think the third option that you're missing, there's a possibility that there's a real reason for them to be concerned. There's the possibility they're just saying it to get off their chest. And the third is that I think anxiety, rather than the worry causing anxiety, I think sometimes anxiety causes,
You're exactly right.
If you have a client who is a really anxious client who doesn't have necessarily a history and they're just super worried, sometimes they need to be treated for anxiety in some way or another, because this isn't going to be the only manifestation of it.
So I think that's the first part of this, is your preparation and looking at where what I do you have life experience with death? Like, have people in your life died? And if they have, how have you dealt with it? How have other people, what have people said and done that has helped you? And what are things that people have done that turned you off?
Yeah. So I think that, we're sort of moving into the practical tips, and I think that if you are drawn, no, I think that's a good thing. If you're drawn to being a bereavement doula, which means people who know they're going to have a loss and want someone sitting there with them are going to call you, you probably should do a training for that.
I think so.
If you are a doula who is understanding that things are going to happen that you can't be prepared for, you don't necessarily need to do a training, but you do need to hopefully your doula training brought up this topic and got you thinking about it a little bit. I don't know that there's a one-size-fits-all practical advice. I would say, I hope I don't need to say this, but don't abandon your client if a live baby isn't born. And sometimes I think you need to almost, if you're working with a client and it becomes obvious that there's a problem, they may not want you to be there, or they may not expect you to be there. And you have to ride a very delicate line of making sure they know you're available
Without pushing your way in.
And so, because sometimes women will say, this baby isn't going to be born alive, so your job is done. Well, your job's not done. Your job is there to support if they're letting you off the hook because they think it's not your job, you should make sure they know that you can be there.
Yeah.
And really, this is hard. If you're listening right now and you're thinking, I couldn't do it, that's a problem. You need to think about that, because that is part of your job.
That's right.
It's awful. And you know what? It doesn't have to be easy, and it doesn't have to be graceful, and it will affect you. It will change you. But you can't step back because you don't want to do it.
No, because it's uncomfortable for you. Yeah, because I used to say, and I think we talked about this in another podcast.
I feel like we have too.
I think I used to say, if you absolutely cannot, then be honest and let this person know that you feel she needs someone more than you. But I've taken that back.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this is what she hired you for. And she is giving you the honor. They are giving you the honor and the privilege of going through their birth. And now this birth is still going to happen. It's just not going to happen in the way that anybody anticipated. And you can't have a back out when it gets hard. I mean, I know that sounds a little harsh of me, but I really mean that. Put it in that perspective. You agreed to be there for the process. And the process isn't always going to be easy, no matter what the outcome is. So this is your job, to learn how to be compassionate and to be present for whatever the experience is. So I think all of us can rise up to meet a challenge like this, because what we're talking about right now, Sarah, is that this is somebody who's asking us to follow through with a stillbirth. That moment could happen at the moment of the actual birth. So you better know how you're going to rise up to it. That's my point why I decided to take the option away, that if you absolutely couldn't do this, you could remove yourself from the circumstance.
I'm torn on that, because for the mama who's going through the stillbirth, I want her to have somebody who can handle it.
But see, I'm giving credit to all of our listeners, and
they can step up if they need to.
Yes, because I think that they wouldn't be doing this work if they weren't those people who could step up and meet this challenge. And like you said, it's not going to be an easy challenge. It's not going to be something that is, it will have a profound effect on them. And so, as I've said, every time that these kinds of statements come out of me, I'm not the ruler, I'm not the one. I want you to listen to your own self and trust that you'll know that, yes, if you cannot participate in that, you'll find the grace to handle that and remove yourself from it in a way that is full of grace for those people who you're removing yourself from, and help them find the right person to stand with them. I think that, going back directly also to, Sarah from Tulsa, who sent us this, is to make again the point that you just need to you don't need to dwell on this aspect of birth, because fortunately most babies who are born will be born alive. Most mamas will be alive at the end of the birth as well. But that's the other part of this, is and I think we did talk about this at another time. Sometimes moms die, the woman herself dies. And so it's a loss that the family is going through, and it's a different kind of circumstance that you have to negotiate. But I shared that story about the doula who did have this experience. The mom died a day after the birth from complications, and she felt, the doula called me and she was at a loss as to what should I do. Oh my God. And she was in such a state of shock herself about this woman dying. And then what should I do for the family? Do I still have a role? It's not the mother that I'm dealing with now. It's the the other parent who I know, but I was closer, my focus was more on the woman. And in the end, we decided together was that she absolutely needed to reach out to that partner and make sure that they know that she was available.
Yeah.
And in the end, she was a huge part of it because she helped find donor milk for the baby, because from his perspective, he knew that was important to the mom, that the baby be breastfed. And so he felt like this is some way he could help her continue to be a part of her baby's life. And so that was huge, that he could turn to the doula and say, well, could you help me with that? Because I don't know where to go for it.
Yeah.
I think...
So, yeah, I mean, that goes back to the idea that make sure they know you're available without...
being pushy.
If they were associating you with this healthy birth, it may be too hard for them to see you, and they may not want you there.
Yep.
And you have to respect that too.
Yes.
That can be very hurtful.
Well, and I
to
just
the
had
doula,
that conversation with somebody this past weekend who experienced death with a family, and then has been basically since that moment just ignored.
Yeah.
Just completely ignored. And they feel very, very hurt by it.
Yeah.
Very hurt by it, which in listening, I completely understood that hurt. But what I had to gently express to them was that
it's not about you.
it isn't about you.
Yeah.
And that
it's not
this
a reflection
is obviously
on you.
how they need to go through their grieving process. And it feels crappy. It feels worse to, it adds to this person's sadness for the loss, but that they have to respect that this person is doing what they need to do to get through their loss. And, my recommendation, and again, I think I've shared this before, but I'll put it out there again, is I think it's okay to reach out to that family in a way that's very non-invasive and kind, just to let them, and with no strings attached, which to me would be periodically over the next year, send them a note via the mail, not email. Send them a card just saying, thinking about you, holding you in my heart.
And just a tip for those of you listening who have ever found yourself in that situation and you don't want to do it because you don't want to remind them of it. That's not a thing.
It's impossible.
They are always thinking of it.
Right.
It's so easy to think, I'm wondering how so-and-so is doing, but I don't want to remind them that their husband died or that their child died.
Right.
They know.
They know. And you're not what you're reminding them is that people are kind and compassionate and care. So as a doula, you could put that out there via, like I said, I think it's much better to receive something in the mail. And you just say at the end, I'm always available if you need me. And leave it at that, and no strings attached to that. No expectation on your part that they're going to suddenly call you. But you never know; they may very well do that because they may, in their grieving process, need a new ear, a new person to hold this story for them. And you were present when this experience happened for them, and the other people, come together. Circles of people come around to support people in their immediate grief, and then those circles get thinner and thinner and thinner. So you may be the person that they think, oh my God, she was there, and the fact that she stayed in contact gives them more comfortability to open that doorway again if they feel compelled to do that.
Have you ever run into somebody who has the opposite problem, where the family leans on them too heavily, more, after a loss, that if you were in a normal situation, a typical situation, you would say, like, you should be paying me more to be around more. But I mean, does that happen? Have you heard of that? Where
people become very dependent on that person for that support? Yeah, I think that absolutely can happen. I was in a circumstance somewhat like that many years ago. I wasn't actually at her birth, but I was doing I knew her through birth circle that I facilitated and through family support that I did. Her baby died right at birth. They knew just hours before the baby was born that the baby was not going to survive, that the baby was in essence Anyway, she held her baby in her arms, they did, when the baby died, and then looked for support that I was able to provide. And it was getting pretty heavy for me. It was going into areas where I felt like I was being overwhelmed by their grief. I really became her sounding board of grief. And though I saw that as such an honor and such a privilege to be in that, when it went on for quite a few months, it felt very overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I introduced her to a community of people that I basically handpicked of women who could hold her grief collectively and separately, but that she, instead of just having one person, because she didn't have any interest in going to a support group, but this was more like a mama's group. And that's what it was. It was moms. And she had 2 other children. Yeah. So she could bring her children with her. And they I set it up as informal play date, kind of like, well, why don't we try this? And it really worked. It really worked well. The intensity of her grief didn't just land on me from then on. It got spread, and what happened was each individual met her needs in different ways. And then in the end, the good end of the story, not that there was ever a good end for her because she never had another baby after that. She didn't have her baby. Was that she really worked through a lot of her grief. And over a year period of being a part of this group, I saw the transition in her where she was lighter.
That's great.
And her conversations with people wasn't just about the loss of her baby any longer. She was involved in their lives as well and what they needed. So it became friendship and support. That was my experience. I can never imagine saying, well, I'm going to have to keep charging you more for this.
Yeah.
I don't think that in this circumstance that fits the picture. I think it's knowing your boundary lines again and doing like me, looking at where are the other resources for this person. She had a counselor too, but she needed a different thing than a professional. She needed just
social support.
Yeah, social support.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think that also I do want to mention, there are books out there to read about this. Oh gosh, and all of a sudden, Sarah, the names, and we have some on our recommended reading list. Let's see, I remember. One of them is called Ended Beginnings. It's by Claudia Panathos and Kathy Romeo. And that's a good one. But there's lots of books. There's not lots. There are books out there about this specific topic about childbirth loss. And there are the workshops, as we already mentioned. There is bereavement, which
is that Ended Beginnings, is that more for the parent or for the birth professional?
I think it's for both.
Okay.
That it's just a way of looking at all of this. I have read books also from parents' point of view about loss. And they've been very interesting, very hard to read somebody's story of their own loss, but it can be very informative. But what I want to say, and I meant to say this earlier, so it just got triggered. Remember, there isn't, like you said, a cookie cutter way, I think you said that, on a black and white way on how to handle anybody's grief. do not, and I've said this in other podcasts, do not assume because you said this to one person, it's going to work for somebody else, or that book or this article is the one you should be giving to everyone that you experience this loss with. You are to look at the individual, meet them where they are, keep your words to a minimum. You're really there. Having experienced loss myself in my life, I know really what I wanted from people was just for them to be able to hold my story for me as I spoke it. I really didn't want input. I think a good way to begin, if you're not clear, is to say, I'm here to listen to you. And if you want me to give you any input, if you want me to share anything in response, please let me know. I mean, let them direct you, because don't assume that they want to hear something. Don't assume that they don't want to hear something in feedback. And I've shared in the past as well that my son and his partner's baby was stillborn. Actually, it'll be 10 years on February 1st, which is just, it makes me want to cry. I can't believe he'd be 10. And I was not there when he was born, but I was there for the immediate after experience, and for obviously the 10 years since. But I learned so much from that, and it was heartbreaking to be with your son and know it's your grandchild on top of this. But I came from it as the listener, and that's really all I did. There were what I thought I already knew, and then it became so clear to me. There was very little I could say.
That's the thing.
That would in any way enhance this experience for them. I felt like the less I said, and more just when the tears rolled down my eyes, which I have done with people who I'm not a family member of. They saw that I had compassion and that I felt their pain for them.
I think I have two things to say about that. One is, if you, the 3-second rule, if you are thinking about trying to say something to make them feel better, don't, because you can't. And that is where people make the biggest mistake. When people say it was God's plan, this was supposed to happen, you're going to feel better one day.
Or in the end, you'll understand.
Right. This is all for a reason. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that are intended to make someone feel better, are the things where people end up putting their foot in their mouth. Right. So just don't try to make them feel better. No. You can't. About the crying thing, as I have strong opinions about this. Crying with a client. Mm-hmm. Now, a family member, of course. Mm-hmm. I used to think that you should really, really try not to cry. Mm-hmm. And I still do think you should try not to cry with a client.
Fall apart cry.
Right. But I think if you can't control it, you just need to make sure they don't feel like they need to take care of you.
Absolutely. So
I've been in a situation where there was a loss, and I would leave the room when I needed to cry because I felt like they couldn't hold. It didn't feel like I didn't feel like I could hold it back enough that it was just a nice little tear here and there. I mean, I was so upset. And so I would leave the room, and the nurse and I would go and cry. So just be aware of that. If you're going to fall apart, the person who's grieving should not have to take care of you. That's I think you're probably going to run into times when you are if you're a human person with a heart, mm-hmm. something's going to happen in a client relationship, where it's going to trigger emotions in you, but just make sure that they don't have to take care of you.
Absolutely.
And I know that's not what you meant, but I just want to throw that out
I think
there.
It's really good to put it out there, because this is a question that I get asked regularly at workshops from, at least at every workshop, somebody will say, "Oh gosh, is it okay to cry?" And sometimes they're talking about the joy. And other times they're talking about if there's a pain or sorrow that's going on. And, some people just aren't criers, right. Some of you. You know how to hold that in, and that's totally acceptable. But if you are somebody where the tears start to come, I don't think it's inappropriate if if it's not inappropriate, it's just not the falling apart part that you're talking about.
Exactly. In this situation I'm talking about, I needed to fall apart. I needed to fall apart. And I just couldn't do it in front of her, or in front of her partner in this situation. So that was a little different. But yeah, I think.
Yeah. And then in the end, what you're going to need is support for yourself. It's just like what you said, you needed a place to fall apart.
So let's do a topic on more unexpected outcomes. Let's do a topic on doula self-care for loss and talking, because you need to have your places for support.
Right. And then what we'll do also, because Sarah, who in Tulsa, if you're listening, which I think you are, because you told us that you listen all the time and love the podcast, and you said, I have listened to every episode many more times than once. Yes, we love that, Sarah. But we will do another podcast where we will have a guest with us who specializes more in how to work with the family with a loss, so that we can be more well-rounded in this as well. But we just really wanted to start the topic and give people an awareness of it, kind of like what we do in workshops. In our workshops, this is an absolute, it's one of those, every time, Sarah, we have a workshop, and I know this is the next topic we have to discuss. I think, maybe this time I just won't bring it up.
Yeah. Because
I know that honestly, sometimes I have pregnant women in the workshop. I have had, I may know that a woman or more in the workshop have had losses. So that makes me feel very sensitive to them that I'm going to be broaching this topic. But with those pregnant women and with those who have had the losses, and for those who have never, who aren't even thinking that death is part of birth, it is imperative that I talk about it, because it's not a secret. It's like that quote that goes out there that birth,
women's power is the secret of birth is not that it's
right, and that this
painful.
Isn't, and that we kept birth hidden for so long. We can't do this with death either. I mean, it's the unfortunate experience. There, it just can happen to anyone at any time, and you may be the person, for whatever reason, is present for that moment of that experience in these people's lives. So I think it is a topic we can talk about in much more detail with somebody else as well.
Yep.
So.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have anything to add to this topic, if you have other questions or specific experiences that you want to share, please let us know.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good week. Be healthy. Be well.
Bye.